Hello. Of all the subjects that poets in the Tang Dynasty loved to write about, bidding farewell was probably one of their favorite, and there have been numerous masterpieces that we still often recite and quote now. Some popular topics come and go, because while the circumstances change, the subjects lose their relevance. Yet, saying goodbye to families or friends is such a universal and timeless scenario. The sentiment thousands of years ago could still be felt precisely even now, which makes people love this kind of poems. So far, we've learned two poems of such a theme, one by Li Bai, when he was seeing off his friend Meng Haoran to Guangling via the Yangtze River on a boat. 黄鹤楼送孟浩然之广陵, where we have 孤帆远影碧空尽，唯见长江天际流. And then we have the 赋得古原草送别 by 白居易, the 野火烧不尽，春风吹又生, as a symbol for never dying friendships. Although these two lines have later gained new meanings, it has become symbols of the quality of being persistent and enduring. These two are both fabulous poems, but the one by Li Bai was mostly about his own personal experience with specific scenes or sights of what he saw on the spot, and the one by Bai Juyi was a composition for an exam, not in a real setting. Today we are going to look at a poem by Wang Wei in the prime Tang era. Wang Wei was a couple of years older than Li Bai on the same subject. It was from a real setting, and the poet wrote quite stunningly what everybody probably felt when facing a long farewell. Let's look at the title first. It's 送元二使安西. Song is to see off people, as in 黄鹤楼送孟浩然之广陵. Yuan Er refers to a person. We mentioned last week that people in the Tang Dynasty often ranked people within a big family according to the ages, as Cui Jiu means the guy with Cui as surname was ranked ninth. So here is the same. This was Wang Wei's friend. His surname was Yuan, and he ranked second in his family, so Yuan Er. Shi means to go as in a delegate. And Anxi is one of the administrative regions in the Tang Dynasty in northwest of China, around current-day Xinjiang. So if we look at, this is Xi'an or Chang'an, so Anxi is around this area, where currently Xinjiang is. So this Yuan Er has been appointed an official in this Anxi area and was going to start his journey, and Wang Wei was coming to see him off. A very straightforward title, telling us what the poem was about and who were involved. Let's read this poem together first. 渭城朝雨浥轻尘，客舍青青柳色新。劝君更尽一杯酒，西出阳关无故人. This poem was written, and the farewell scene was set in the city of Weicheng. Cheng means the city, and Wei is the name of a river, the Wei River. It's west of the capital of Tang, Chang'an, current-day Xi'an. So here is Weicheng. It's a bit west out of the Chang'an. And this Yuan Er was going to the west all the way to Anxi, which is really, really far, truly thousands of miles. Zhao is morning, as in 朝辞白帝彩云间, and yu is rain. Yi means to wet, qing means light, and the chen is dust. So this line is saying the morning rain in the city of Weicheng has wetted the light dust on the road. This Yi is actually not a very common character in modern Chinese. In fact, I couldn't think of any other places where I've seen this Yi. But somehow I don't know exactly why. It feels very appropriate, very vivid, and it sounds very pleasant. Now it says the rain has wetted dust. What dust? The poet didn't say explicitly, but why was he interested in talking about dust in the first place? Can we figure it out? Of course, he was being very subtle about the departure of his friend Yuan Er. His friend would be leaving on either horseback or carriages, but either way, when the departure was being prepared, and perhaps the horses were moving around in small steps, dust from the ground would be let up, and while it was raining, the dust would be wetted. And because the horses were not galloping yet, the dust must be only light, so 清晨. And because of the moisture, the otherwise annoying flying dusts would be very much subdued, and it might be even rather refreshing. You see, if we read the poem very carefully, in great details, and think while we read, we could find so much information. Personally, I could never stop admiring how abundant messages such short poems often contain, and how masterful these great poets are. Let's move on to the next line. 客 is guest, and 舍 is place of accommodation, such as a lodge or a hotel. Here we can guess that this friend of the poet may have stayed in a guest house in the city of Weicheng before the long journey to the west. In the morning, they all woke up and got ready to set off next to the hotel. So this is what 客舍 was referring to. 青 is blue or green, and 柳 is willow tree, and 色 is color, 新 is new. So the lodge looks lovely green. This character doubling up, 青青, has an effect of softening things. So this green color wasn't too loud and aggressive. Why? Because it was early spring, because the willow tree had just budded. Therefore, the color was light, fresh, and new. 柳色新. The lodge wasn't green. The green color came from the willow tree. Do you still remember what we said before about willow trees? In Chinese poetry, it is a unique tree, almost always symbolizing a departure scene and a sentiment of attachment, of not willing to let go, because it was used as a pun. This liu had the same pronunciation of the word meaning to stay, liu. We first saw this in 凉州词 by Wang Zhihuan. 羌笛何须怨杨柳，春风不度玉门关. So whenever you see this liu in Chinese poetry, you should immediately think about associating it with a farewell scene. The poet here again very subtly pointed out that it was about saying goodbye, and he was very attached to his friend, not really willing to see him go. Let's move on. 劝 means to advise, to suggest, and also a hint of encouragement. 君, we've seen this word many times now. Last time in last week, 落花时节又逢君, a respectful form of you when addressing somebody. Here it refers to this Yuan Er. 更 means again. 尽 means to end, as in 白日依山尽，野火烧不尽，孤帆远影碧空尽。一杯酒, a cup of wine or some liquor. 杯 is cup, and 酒 is any alcoholic drink. So here the poet is encouraging his friend to have another drink, to bottle up another drink. When people say goodbye to their friends, they would often have some alcoholic drink, and I think this custom has lasted to this day. So we could imagine that these two friends must have drunk quite some liquor now, but they still felt this was not enough. So Wang Wei asked Yuan Er to have another round, 更敬一杯酒. And he explained why he did so, because 西出阳关无故人. 西 is west. 出 is going out of, or we could understand it as going out to, because Yuan Er was going to the far west. Yangguan is the name of a famous pass in the West. This is what Yangguan looks like now. It's a ruin. This guan means, this guan we know it means pass or some fortress. In fact, it's very near another famous pass that we read before in Wang Zhihuan's 凉州词春风不度玉门关. So this is where both Yumenguan and Yangguan are. Both are considered the edge of the Central Empire, beyond which is a far, far cold barren land. So Yuan Er would go all the way to this Yangguan and Yumenguan and all the way to Anxi, which is really, really far. Wu means none. And here, there is none. There is none what? 故人. 故人 is old friends or old people, old acquaintances that were known in the past. We've seen this before again. 故人西辞黄鹤楼. So Wang Wei was saying, please have another drink, because once you set your foot beyond Yangguan in the west, there will be nobody that you know to be with you, implying, so let's enjoy this last moment of being together now. Here, Yangguan actually does not necessarily mean the physical location of this pass, as we can see from the map that there was still quite a long distance where Yangguan was. It's just a reference to the frontier far away from the prosperous center of the empire. The poet conveyed a very true and deep emotion of fondness and attachment. Like many timeless lines in the ancient Chinese poetry, this 劝君更尽一杯酒，西出阳关无故人 is so fitting to the scene and the mood being described, yet so plain and natural. It gained huge popularity ever since it was first written. It is probably the most famous line describing a parting scene of all time, and people in the Tang Dynasty even added music score to the poem so it could be sung. Because of this poem has another name, such as 渭城曲 or 阳关曲. 曲 means a tune or a song, and both 渭城 and 阳关 were names of places taken from this poem. We could imagine a scene where the singer sang this poem on the stage in those old days, and like every pop song nowadays, the highlight would be repeated over and over again. What is the highlight of this poem? It's 劝君更尽一杯酒，西出阳关无故人. Because this part was usually sung over and over again, this poem also has the name of 阳关三叠. 叠 means to repeat or to overlap. So this means to sing this 阳关 line 3 times. Unfortunately, the tune has been long lost, but the spirit is still lying in the language of the poem, which now people so much loved. That's all. Thank you very much.